Yo, 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 yo.
Yo, Rob,
What up, what up, what up, what up?
where will he be at tonight?
Listen, you better
What-
be happy I don't show up with a do-rag on.
hey
I'm in full
man,
force.
I just took mine off. You should be able to see the crease across
Word.
my forehead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen, your joint's been spinning for a long time. What it do? What's going on?
What's up, man?
It's all good. Ain't
How's
doing too
everything?
much. Everything's doing well. Everything's going well. You know what I mean? Enjoying the life, you know.
Yeah, man. Weather's getting better.
Yeah, no, definitely. How you doing? Outside of the weather getting better, how are you?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. Just trying to get better every day. You
Hmm.
know, if I can dodge these pollen particles outside.
Listen, word of advice. If you tell yourself you got allergies, you're gonna have allergies.
Bro, I ain't got to tell myself. It's 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 a far gone conclusion.
Yeah,
The
man, you gotta
only
do something about that.
Yeah, one of the better things is my allergies haven't been so severe as it has been or could be due to wearing masks over the last couple
Mm,
of allergy seasons, right?
okay.
Um, has prevented an over inhalation of the green powder, all that
Hmm.
pollen all over the place. And now, right now, where I'm at is grass pollen. My wife
Yeah,
was like, I ain't even. We was like, man, we didn't even know grass had pollen.
I'm gonna tell you right now, it's the food the same way for those who are 70s and 80s babies and maybe even early 90s babies. They used to give you peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in school. Now, some people are going to tell me, "Oh, but there were people who were allergic to peanuts." Listen, if the amount of people who were allergic to peanuts was the same as it is now, a lot of our schoolmates would be dead
Yes,
because there was so much
incredible.
peanut butter in the air. There was so much peanut butter on people's hands.
All
Like
on the seat, the tables,
bro,
all over the place.
if
It was in
somebody,
all the snacks.
bro, it's the GMO stuff.
Yeah,
It gotta be, like there has to be some connection to the changing and mass production of food processes over the past 20 years as globalization has grown. To be able to
yeah,
feed so many people, that has to be a cost. And I think that sometimes we forget that the earth is a living organism.
yep,
And as you produce these different things and your body reacts to things that are newly created
yep.
that were not here before, your body is like, yep, I'm gonna kick that ass.
Yeah. Right. And then
I'm gonna kick that ass.
people put profits over ergonomics, over safety, over long term health disparities, like and health issues. Nah, but we're gonna make like candy. Like I just think about, man, growing up in Atlanta and in New Jersey, right? One of
Mhm.
the things that we used to do, we used to go to the gas station, when I was little in Atlanta, to go to the food mart that was connected to the gas station down south, right? Which is synonymous to the bodegas,
Mhm.
right? Up in the Northeast, and go get candy, man. Candy don't even taste the same. You could drop a piece of candy on the ground right now and the ants won't touch it. The high fructose corn syrup. I feel bad for my children. I'm like, you don't, y'all don't really understand the deliciousness of cane sugar in your candy. Y'all got some other stuff y'all working with.
Yeah, things are so different.
It's very
If we
different,
look
man.
at if we adjust price, if we adjust wages for inflation, and wages haven't gone up since the 70s. Why in the world are penny candies like 25 cents now? Right? When you really think about it, folks was probably, when I was younger, when they had penny candies, The minimum wage was $5.15. Some places are up to $3. Some places maybe up to 10 as he moved closer to 15. But I doggone sure know a bag of chips is 50 cents, and they put less chips in it. I
Listen,
doggone sure know.
that daggone olive guy. My mother-in-law talks about the olive guy, right? He discovered that he could stay in the black, pardon the expression, if he put 3 or 4 less olives in each jar. And ever since that case study came out, man, you open up a bag of chips, ain't nothing but air. I remember when Kansas soda was 12 ounces. Where did they get this 11.6, 11.5? I remember you could go get a 2 liter, you can get a 3 liter soda, a 2 liter soda, you can get a liter
Yep.
and a can.
Yep.
You can't even get some of this stuff no more. No more 2 liters in some of these places. You know, and it's just incredible how business decisions can change lives. Like big business decision will change your life. Just an ingredient in your beverage, in your favorite beverage. We're gonna
Can
we're
cut the
gonna
cost.
we're gonna cut the cost.
Right, and that also ties into people, right? So
Right,
once people realize, like, hey, well, if we can do this with less people, we'll cut them. Yeah, it may impact the community, but we're here for our shareholders, and this will always be a complaint of mine. And I feel like I've said this before.
uh-huh.
We value people putting up their money over people putting up their time. That's the reason that you can change out the cane syrup or the cane sugar for high fructose corn syrup.
Right, right,
Ultimately, that one little change could have been a cost savings of 15%.
right.
You know what I mean?
And that's
So
big money.
correct, 15%, and that goes right back to someone's pocket.
That's
So
big
that's
money.
what we're looking for. How do we get these multi-millionaires and billionaires and 401ks and pension funds their monies? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a great it's a great problem for our children and our children's children to solve because
Hmm.
it's coming to a head, right? And we've talked about it on this show. And yo, welcome everybody to the Level Up Past Corporate Trauma Podcast. We love that y'all are sticking with us. We
Hmm.
want to, we put thought and effort into each week. And some weeks are easier than others, but man, we really are dedicated to this whole process and opening up a platform for these discussions to take place, right? Because just like we said a few minutes ago, man, big business decisions impact people's lives.
Hmm.
And man, I mean, some of the smallest things have some of the widest implications. Um, you know, and it impacts people differently, right? It impacts people in a more significant way, depending on where you're at, what your station in life is. Um, but at a certain point, most professionals will have to face some of the same possibilities. Some are, us as consumers, like sometimes we just don't have control over it. But when you're talking about your livelihood and your job, right? You pretty much everybody's going to either face it or consider that is a possibility, right?
Hmm.
um that the normal natural happenings in a person's career may happen to you at any given moment. And that leads us to our subject tonight, man. And I can't wait to talk to Rob
We
about this. And man, y'all chime in, give us your thoughts, wherever you feel stimulated to contribute. But our subject tonight is, you know, uh, when is it time to quit? When is it time to quit my job?
Mhm.
Right Nobody really likes to go into a job thinking about, all right, what is it that I need to um, be resolved in each and every day when I come into work, uh, that might be a deal breaker that I may have to part ways with my organization. And then the second part of that subject is, what do I do if I get fired? If and when I get fired. And I mean fired as in, boy, you messed up, you know, go ahead, report report to headquarters and drive your own car, right? Or come to the conference room and security's waiting there. You can't go to your desk. That type of fire, and that also includes um, being laid off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or um, your organization is reorganizing your department and your position gets dissolved. Like, what do you do, right, as a professional when that thing happens to you? See, these are things, and nobody ever in college, nobody ever talked to me like about that. All right, Jamal, you going into corporate America, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may want to consider, what is the right thing to do? How do you quit your job? And what to do if you lose your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about tonight. And what do you think, Rob? Just initially, before we get into the first side of it, when is it time to quit? Before we even go there, what are you thinking? Rob's like, I ain't never quit. I ain't never been fired. I what you say?
I just magically popped up at a different job.
Right.
You come to work one day, like, we're Rob. I don't know.
he across, he across the street.
Yeah, I saw him walking into work. He was across the street.
Yeah.
But for me, man, you have to you have to look at things the same way that businesses do,
Yeah.
and it's just a mindset of, you may not be in a position when you're going to work to be always thinking about profits, but you have to be trying to figure out, how am I maximizing this very finite amount of time that I have.
Right.
And that's not just when you go to work, that's just in general. So if you're spending 40 hours out of your, what, 100 and something hours, I used to know that number, right? But
168 hours a week.
168 hours, right? So
Yep.
if what's that? Uh, 25%. So if you spending 25% at work, you
Yep.
know, you may be spending at least 25, another 25% sleeping. Can you afford to go somewhere that gets on your nerves, has you going bald, has you getting fat, stressed out? When you get home, you want to argue with your husband, you want to argue with your wife, and just because it offers some financial stability or a paycheck that allows you to feed yourself, is it worth the sacrifice? So I just think that at some point in time, you got to say to yourself, for where I am and what I'm doing, is it working for me in its totality? Like, and does it really work for my life? And I think that sometimes we don't take enough time just to take a step back and say, hey, I don't need to be 65 to decide this isn't the place I want to be, or this isn't even the industry that I want to be. I don't need to wait till I can get Social Security or I can get my pension. This
Right.
place just isn't for me. I gotta go.
Right. Yeah. Um, when I hear you, when I hear you say those things, what really speaks to me is that, all right, well, what is your plan? Right. Gone are the days, and our younger generation can bear me witness because we've seen them practice this mindset more than once, over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to gone are the days where you walk into a job, right? And you are thinking that you are going to work there forever.
Mm-hmm.
What does forever mean? Like, my whole career, or 75% of my career. Um, that just does not happen nowhere near as often as it did 25, 30, 40 years ago, right? You know, I have a, my mom, I mean, she's had several different jobs, but she's had the, the job that she has now, she's had it for like 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Like that's gone are the days where the majority of us will be able to say that. Now, you might be working within the same field of endeavor, you might be doing the same type of work your whole career or most of your career, and maybe even not that, but working at the same institution where you know you're going to get your merit increase every year, or where you know you're going to get a bonus every year, where if you stay, you know, 15, 20, 25 years, you know, your home you will be paid for, and your 401k is going to be preparing you for retirement, all in the same organization. Not likely anymore. So the question, right, that we got to get into is, when do I know when it's time to go, right? So most people nowadays is, you know, I know when to quit one job is when I got another one, right? I got to interview on my lunch break. I got to, you know, under the radar. You know, I'm on LinkedIn, or I hire a headhunter, or you know what I mean, or somebody I know somebody that knows somebody, and um, I become a sought after commodity within the industry, whatever it is, right? A lot of people wait until they get the other position, but is that really an effective practice? Because you may be jumping from one institution to the institute, you know, from one job to the next, one company to the next, right? And your pay increase, you know, your title might change, and you might advance yourself, and maybe not, right? Um, but all of that aside, with respect to corporate trauma, when is it time to go? And one of the things that made me think about this subject tonight is, somebody said to me recently, man, you know what, Jamoul, sometimes people collect information at work just to find something to complain about. And I had to be like, man, not only did it resonate with me, you know, I found myself, as I started to reflect, as somebody that's guilty of doing that in the past, right? And maybe in the present, I don't know. But but I've done that. But it got to the point where I pondered on that statement so much that I was like, man, do people actually know? All right, it's time for me to quit, right? And I don't mean quit abruptly. Um, I don't mean just walk out, which a lot of people have done over the last 2 years. A lot of people have done that very same thing. And, you know, obviously circumstances have been very exaggerated where it has really called for people to be able to do that. Case in point, you're on mute. Uh,
We quit.
Re-quit. You know what I'm saying? Case in point, very necessary, right? Because sometimes people don't get it. But there's times where you're in a professional situation and it's not working out, right?
Mhm.
You may find yourself in a situation where you are, man, I'm looking, I'm searching, I'm seeking information just to complain, to avoid coming to making a decisive choice
Yeah,
that it's time for me to go. What would you say? What advice would you give to somebody like that, Rob?
that last piece is more like when, well, two things. I don't know if I've gone to work looking for something wrong, but I do know that something wrong usually finds me.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to look at it that way. And I am usually a person who, when I find something wrong, I go and I try to say something about it. And then people hit me with the, nah, man, it ain't that crazy. And then now I'm left looking like the person who's crying wolf. And then I'm gonna tell you again, yo, this ain't looking right. Then when you play me for stupid, I'm gonna light that ass up, and I'm gonna be on you, and I'm lighting the flames, and they gonna be like, yo, man, who then got this dude started? And then I'm gonna do my best to help change things as I light you on fire, and then I'm gonna quit, and then I'm gonna be out the door. See, I did so much talking, I forgot your question.
No, no, no. You on it?
But
you,
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. What you about to
no,
say?
no, I was at. What I asked is, what advice would you give someone seeking? When is a good? What are good indicators that it may be time to take your talents elsewhere?
Perfect. You know what the crazy thing is? This isn't everyone, but a lot of people do this piece. You give more slack to, when I say slack, meaning you give more leeway to people at work, giving you nonsense and doing nonsense to you, than you do your significant other. There's so many cues that you get. Like sometimes your gut just tells you this ain't the right place for me. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm wasting my time. And if we look all across social media, there will be so many men and women who say, I just knew it was time. Like it just wasn't right. There's no real, for many of us, and yes, the work may be one thing, but a lot of times there's no real emotional attachment sometimes to some of these places. You may be attached to the work and the impact you can make, but you also know you can make that same impact other places. But a lot of times we make up the excuses for these folks. Because
Facts.
many of us, we like abuse.
Facts.
We may just not recognize it as abuse. And sometimes we have to look at it and say, do these people truly value me?
Right.
And if these folks don't value me, that means monetarily, that means physically, that means spiritually, and do they value the time that I put forth, the time that I cannot get back?
Right.
And that's the one thing that as someone who has different companies and has different folks that I interact with, I'm always big on like reminding folks like we're not guaranteed anything past the current moment that we have. And the idea that you've given me the one moment that you had in your hand, I'm appreciative of that. And if there's a way for me to show you that I appreciate you for that, I will. I don't know if many of the places that we work at and many of the people who we interact with look at it that way.
Right.
And as people of color, um, regardless of what religious background we follow, a lot of us, especially as Black folks, have taken on the mantra of when I get to the other side, I'll get mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it's tough where you can take people who have worked for 30, 40 years and they knew folks were garbage, they knew that they were being mistreated, but they said I'm gonna do whatever I can, and some people just didn't have an opportunity to get new jobs. But now we come into the new world, and a lot of that's not gonna float. So for those who may be in different situations, just ask yourself, would you accept this if a check wasn't coming with it? If
Right.
if there wasn't some type of attachment to your bank account,
Right.
if you were not attached to the title, if you were not attached to, you know, what people think of this position, if all things were equal and you just looked at it pound for pound, does this provide value to my life outside of the money going in my bank account? And if you start to say no to a number, if you say no to all of them, you probably need to figure out what day I'm leaving,
Yes.
right? If you say no to a couple of them, you got to start to count down and say, okay, hey, It may not be soon, but unless something changes,
Changes.
this place won't see me catch too many gray hairs here.
Right.
They will not see me gray hair because they don't appreciate me. And
Right.
I don't know if folks catch that from the podcast enough.
Right.
Like I don't know if folks pay attention to that piece enough. But the biggest thing about corporate trauma, outside of you understanding what it is, outside of you recognizing that you may be experiencing it, it's also what are you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
Right? Because are you going to consistently give up your power? Are you going to go outside and strike? Are you going to go outside and protest? Or are you going to use what you know you do have? And that's your feet. Tell them to go find another person. Find somebody else that can do what I do and figure out how you make it work.
Right.
But I shall not be disrespected no more.
Right. Yes. And I say if the good starts to be outweighed by the bad, and you and your happiness as an individual starts to be negatively impacted, and this is paycheck and salary, title, direct reports, putting all that aside, right? It's time to look for the exit ramp. Now that may not necessarily mean an abrupt exit.
Mm-hmm,
That may mean 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, six
mm-hmm,
months, right? Whatever it is that you need to plan so that it is beneficial and productive. Because the worst thing, one of the things that we want to stay away from, in my opinion,
mm-hmm.
as an advisor, is you don't want to make a bad situation worse by making a decision that is emotional and
Emotion. True.
ends up being counterproductive to your goals in the long run, right?
Go,
You're
go ahead.
not happy. The bad is outweighing the good, and I quit without 2 weeks' notice
Mm-hmm.
within an industry that has a very long memory and a very narrow, um, is a very shallow industry. So, if I go over here, they're gonna know me over there from being over at the other place, and then people are gonna know what happened, right? That's just not what you want to do, in my opinion. However, it may be necessary, right? I would never advise anyone to pick their job over their well-being. And sometimes, man, I know people have sunken into the quicksand deep enough that they have to get out now, or they're gonna drown. Right? That's a different situation. Other than that extreme, plan, plan, right? And if the plan doesn't get you out of the situation, then you may want to reconsider. All right, well, let me see if staying is really what I want to do, or if it's really what I need to do, right? And then obviously you got to take things into consideration outside of yourself. Do I want to start over from scratch somewhere else, where I have to put my brain power to making a name for myself, or shortening a learning curve at a time or in a period in my life where I don't necessarily have the luxury of dedicating that type of energy to this. I may need to stay where I'm at just to be stable long enough for a season in my life outside of work to pass, right? These are all things that you have to consider. Um, but plan and start with the, and when you start with the end in mind. All right. I tell people, I advise, you'll know after it takes 21 days to break a bad habit. You start a new job, you're there for 21 days, you've broken the bad habit of the previous job, or the habit. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad habit, but you've broken the habit of working somewhere else after 21 days. So if you can do that, you can also do a preliminary analysis and plan after 21 days. All right, what does this look like for me? It may not necessarily be uh, what it is in 18 months or in 2 years from now, but at least after 21 days, you have a outline or a skeleton of some sort of plan. This is where I want to go. This is where I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish here. Right. And this is like, put it down. You can always change it. Because what we end up doing is staying too long sometimes, right? And then what we end up doing is leaving too soon sometimes because we didn't have a plan. You're on mute again.
I
We
just,
didn't have a plan. We didn't have a plan. We just went in there willy nilly, like we gonna work here forever as long as them paychecks keep coming.
yeah, the crazy thing is that plan is to help you think through not doing something that's gonna hurt you in the long run.
Right,
Give yourself some time to remove yourself from the emotion
right.
to do something brash. Something that's gonna, when you look back, you're like, I probably should. I didn't have to move like that. So for me, I'm always looking and trying to figure out how much value can I bring and how much value can I extract and do our purposes align. And sometimes I still have value that can be added, but the place just may not align with where I am personally at that point in time in my life. And for me, I've been in situations where I didn't leave when I could have for opportunities that were better.
Because you
Where
have a plan. Yep.
I didn't have a plan and the opportunity arrived unexpectedly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where like I could have got a free master's degree. I would have made a little less money, but I would have got a free master's degree, right? And like so my career would have been completely different. And this, I was asked that question about coming to the school and getting a master's degree. I was working at a bank on one hand, and then I was asked, "Hey, come and work at this school, and you can get your master's free as a graduate assistant." And I instantly said no because I didn't feel like that was a part of the plan. Lo and behold, that was June. Lo and behold, by the time we got to August, people was losing their jobs because it was the financial crisis. I was like, oh shit, I should have been in school. I should have been in school. Now, people will hear that and say, well, but things still worked out. But here's the difference. I was already caught up in just being happy to have a job. I wasn't thinking about the overall plan. I was like, I'm gonna go here. I want to be a CEO of a bank. But that was it. There was nothing in between that I was thinking about. I'm just like,
Right.
you gonna work hard, you're gonna start here, and you're gonna work hard, and you're gonna end up here.
Right.
But no plan.
No plan.
No steps in between, no goals, no mile markers, none of those things. It was just like, yo, just rock out.
Right.
So every time
And
those opportunities come, how can you be ready if you're not even thinking about
and some of the best organizations to work for
it? Hmm.
or work with are ones that already have a schematic or people in place that can already tell you, all right, this is how you build an archetype for your career
Hmm.
if this is your goal,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
If your organization can't provide you a stair step or a
Hmm.
ladder way of what's possible, then you're going to have to do it, or that's not the place for you ultimately, right? You may have to get what you need to get from them and then plan your exit, right?
Correct.
um
Correct.
whatever you do, plan,
Hmm.
right? That's the point here. That's the big point here. And part of your plan Shout out to my man Kenji.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, Kenji Godfrey Tax Services, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tax season is over. I know he's somewhere sipping a virgin pina colada on his couch with his feet kicked up. What up, Kenji? Um,
What up?
there's a money side to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever your plan is, if you don't have a requisite amount of savings that could sustain you,
Mm-hmm.
whether you have a job and it's time to go and you have another job lined up or not, right? You end up see that whole thing to yeah, Jamal, all you need is don't quit if you don't like it where you're working, don't quit that job until you have another one.
Yeah.
But if I don't like where I'm working and I'm actively looking for something else and
Yeah.
I don't have money to sustain me, if I don't find what I'm looking for and I may have to leave, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump from the frying pan right into the fire and make a poor decision out of desperation. Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not.
Every time.
Right? You know what I'm saying? So you have to, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
planning is important. Having a plan.
Man,
And wait,
it's
and
process.
I was watching the comedian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I forget my man's name. He's on Netflix. He was like, "Man, my wife and I wasn't getting along." He said, "So we decided to divorce." He said, "I didn't like her. She didn't like me. I didn't like my children no more. My children didn't like me, and we all
Mm-hmm.
had agreed, right, that ending this family is what we needed to do." He said, and we locked in and worked so hard to do the things that we needed to do to solidify the divorce
The
that
divorce.
we ended up falling in love with each other all over again and decided not to get divorced. You know what I'm saying? So
Well,
it was the actual absence of the plan
yeah.
proactively to work together to do something that was the missing piece. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that'll keep you happy where you're at,
Because you
right?
realize.
And then obviously the money and everything will come, um, or it may not, but usually it'll come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, hopefully y'all got something out of that. If you're thinking about quitting your job, right? Don't hurt your brand. I know a lot of people have been leaving during the great resignation with no notice.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you rightfully so, and some of you just jumped on the bandwagon and went with the trend, right? You somebody told me one time I was roasting somebody that worked for me. Jamal, be careful. You know, even though you're right, he may be somebody you may be working for one day.
One day, real soon.
And I'm like, that's kind of far fetched. But the point was he may not he may not necessarily be somebody you're working for, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody
Somebody.
you might be working for. And if you continue that type of behavior, you're gonna run right back into it, unfortunately, right? So don't hurt your brand by being emotional. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you should never make a move that is counterproductive to your own personal career trajectory if you can help it.
And the
And
only way to recognize that is, like you said, to have that plan, at least to be processing it, to be
right,
thinking.
yeah, at least process it. Like think about it. This is what I really want to do. Do I really want to? Like, or am I in my feelings right now? Right?
Yeah, you probably in your feelings.
Yeah,
Probably your feelings, man. It's probably the feelings. The feelings that get you every time.
yeah. And feelings are temporary; they go away.
Mm-hmm.
But
Feelings
we're
will mess your whole entire relationship up with all the people you know.
right,
We all get caught up in those feelings, and we get blinded by
right.
it. You know?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right. So what happens on the other side of the equation
Mm-hmm.
and you get fired or you get let go or you get terminated, you get laid off, your position is dissolved. You no longer have a job and you didn't make that decision. What does Robert Felder do? What do you do?
Unless somebody laying me off, I'll be honest with you. Unless somebody about to lay me off, and God forbid, but I feel like you should know you're gonna get
Huh? You knew it was coming.
I
Right.
feel, I feel like you should have an idea. Like, you
Yeah.
know what? Yeah, this is about to happen. Like, there's no way that you're gonna be able to avoid the nonsense. There's no way you're gonna be able to avoid the consequences of your BS.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think sometimes, people just got to be realistic with a lot of those pieces. Like, hey, I know what I did. I know why. Yeah, there's a possibility this might happen. Because I've been playing games. I've been straight up playing games and I ain't been holding it down. And there's a possibility a joker might walk up in here and be like, get your ass up out of here. And I'm going to look like, what do you mean? I love it here. But deep down inside, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Damn, they caught me. Oh, they got me.
They
You
got
know what
me.
I mean? Yeah. So I think that's the piece, for me that on the fire component, like be realistic. Like somewhere, every time you do some BS at work, just in your mind, you should be saying, like, man, if they wanted to, man, they could probably fire me for that. Like, I literally was out. I took a lunch for 3 hours. I took a half day lunch. My I took a half day, but I said I was going to lunch, and I was just gone.
I
I was
went to
just
lunch.
gone for a whole
I
half
went to lunch.
day
I went to lunch for an hour, bought my food and brought it back and ate it after my lunch break was over.
at my own house, and then watched TV shows, and then realized, wait, and it's 5 o'clock. Yeah. I just, I never went back to work. And then when you show up and you realize like nothing happened, but then like 2 days later, somebody peeped, and then now you got to go.
Mhm.
Like, you understand? Like,
You understand? Yeah, it shouldn't. Even if it is a surprise, don't be surprised.
he said, "Don't be surprised. Don't be
You know
surprised."
why? Because when you get fired, you was already on borrowed time anyway,
Mm,
right? There's something that you didn't see,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
That getting fired now teaches you that very valuable lesson of
Hmm.
what to look for.
Yeah.
Case
Yes.
in point, right? I got fired. I've been fired a couple times, right? I used to be apprehensive about talking about that. But when I think about it, man, it was things that were out of my control or things that um, I just didn't see that
Hmm.
now I see, right?
Hmm.
So one time, I was working for a financial institution and there was construction in my facility. I was understaffed and, you're competing against what last year's numbers and you're on a quarter incentive plan. And if you don't make your numbers right, um, there's your supervisor, your manager, whoever your executive has the discretion to put you on what they call a performance plan.
Pip.
Right.
Hmm.
And if it's a final warning, right, if it gets to that point, like it got with me, right, and I'll tell you why I got that far in a minute. But you work like I did, I'm a competitor. I don't quit. All right, I'm on this performance plan. This is not an indicator of who I am or my value as a professional. I'm gonna get off this plan,
Yeah.
right? Got off the plan, pulled things back together. The branch construction was over, so there wasn't a whole lot of business leaving out.
Hmm.
I was fully staffed now. I made sure I recruited and got staff members in there, and we rocking and rolling, we kicking butt.
Hmm.
And then a quarter two later, missed the goal again. They
Mm.
show up with my final paycheck. Please empty your belongings from your desk, Mr. Seeley.
They ain't like you.
And I'm like, whoa, what's this about? I'm not on a plan. Right, but you got to
You don't
a
get it.
final warning, which means anything within the next 12 months that happens,
Uh,
that is below par, you could be let go for. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But
Yeah,
it's written down somewhere. It's in the employee handbook. It's on file at HR. It's something that they don't tell you. When I got off of the performance plan, my executive didn't tell me that be careful because at any point in time you may not make your goal within the next 12 months. We could revisit this and you could be let go, right?
that's it, bro. That's
At
tough.
the end of the day, any of that didn't have to happen, right? Rob
That's true.
said, you said, somebody didn't like you. But what I realized later on was it was just before the news of the financial downfall hit the media, right? We didn't know it yet, but the financial institutions knew
Amen.
that there was something coming. So what they tried to do was change the incentive plans, make them really, really rigid so
Yeah.
that they could let people go
Yep.
because they were going to have to let people go anyway. But what you do is you terminate them
Yep.
so that you don't have to lay them off and give them a severance package.
Yep.
So you save money. So it was like, no, no, no. So what could happen ended up happening because just like the olive guy we talked about at the beginning of this episode, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Needed to save money. Needed what'd you say, Rob? That 15%? That's
Yeah.
big money. You know what I'm saying? That's big money. So I didn't realize until later. I was a part of a strategic downsizing
Yep.
without the downsizing. Now they just found a way to fire a bunch of people. So what do you do? Don't At the end of the day, take responsibility, but don't beat yourself up. Don't blame yourself.
And
Right?
a lot of that stuff, and to say it in another way from what Jamal is saying, a lot of that stuff isn't about you personally.
Right. It's not.
And I think that that's the piece where we gotta kind of separate things. Where it's like, don't get caught up. Oh, nobody likes me, and nobody loves me. Nobody. They just care about their money,
That's it.
and it's
It's
hard to
narcissism.
process that. Sometimes it's hard for us to process that they care about the bottom line more than they care about you sometimes. And when you first come in, what you don't realize is that they tell you what's a priority, right? Many of the companies will tell you, like, our number one priority is at providing value to our shareholders, those
That's
who
it.
put their money, our main, and that's where it's crazy because they talk about how that was a shift from the 70s and maybe early 80s, where in the beginning it was all about the customer and the employees. That's why people would tell you, if you listen to some older folks, they'll say, man, back in the day, like, companies really took care of you, right? Because they valued the time that people put in.
Right.
Many
Seniority was
companies,
big.
and many companies wasn't as big as they are now. Now you turn around because of the influx of dollars and monies into these companies. Now it shifts from, hey, you gotta love me the most. I'm not really concerned about what you do with the people who work there or the people who are your customers. Just make sure the money come in. That's why 10 years later, when they pop up on one of those commercials, if you took XYZ drug, or you drove XYZ car, and or you had XYZ headphones that were supposed to be noise cancellation headphones, right?
Now you have hearing loss.
People cut corners
Yep.
for those specific things.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So
And Rob, at a lot of times, terminations happen because the people who are at the pay band and authority level above you have to show the people above them that they did something about something that may not even be your fault. All right, we lost. We lost 7% market share the last quarter.
mhm.
All right, what do we? Well, Rob, I could show you I let go 10% of my staff in order to shake up things and make changes, to make sure that it doesn't happen in the next quarter. It may not necessarily be your performance. It may be, you know what, CYA, I got to cover my ASS by letting Robert go or letting Jamoul go off of a technicality. He just drew the short end. He'll be all right. Right. And to Rob's point, they don't care nothing about it. It wasn't a personal decision. So don't beat yourself up about it.
And that's
because if you just meet expectations, you're vulnerable. Let's just call it what it is. If you are performing at a meets expectation, a 3 out of a 5, you could get fired. Even though the word said you met expectation. But if you're not above expectations or exceeds expectations, you are a monetary liability.
That's it.
Did I say something wrong? If you really look at it, Jamoul is just a meat. We got to make a change. So where's all the threes at? It's 12 managers and 5 of y'all are threes. Guess who's going? The 5 threes and the 2 twos, and that 1 has definitely been up out of here, right? And at the end of the day, somebody very smart taught me, at the end of the day, if your organization has to fire you, they didn't do a good job of training and development. Because they spent a lot of money to hire you, to recruit you, and bring you in, and you didn't work out.
I think people got to be realistic, right? Unless you're in an industry where you need to have the FaceTime for legal purposes, I guarantee you if there was a poll and people said, hey, do you feel like you were properly trained for your job? I guarantee you 98% of the world would say no. And to be honest with you, that 2% is probably sales. It is the craziest thing when you really think about it. Sales.
But that's real. That's real statistics.
Sales and nursing, right?
All these businesses.
Sales, nursing, doctors, like those folks probably are the ones that get the real deal training, where everybody else, you bring who you are to the job, and then you learn on the fly.
Yes,
how things work.
Yes,
it's all in your own image, and then people are like, "Well, yo, you're not good," and it's like, "What do you mean? Like I'm over here trying to figure it out."
And it ain't like y'all taught me nothing. And if you're anything like me, you got to get fired to learn it. Oh, I didn't see that coming. Right? All I got was a check for 85 cents that represented the portion of the day that I worked, that they came in, right? On the day, at the time they came in and terminated me. That's how much I had accrued in salary that day. So they had to pay me that. Right. But the crazy part, right? This is the corporate trauma piece of it. The people that's doing the firing is like making it a contentious situation and like making you feel like you did something wrong. Like this is some part of a movie. Like, Jetson, you're fired. Like something off of a cartoon.
Yeah.
Bruh, come on now. You're not firing me because I actually did something wrong. You're firing me because you have you firing a lot of people. 90% of the people get fired because they can be fired. Now, this is, there's exception to the rule. There's people, that's stealing staples in the back of the supply room and got caught. You know what I mean? There's things there. People are breaking cardinal rules at their job, and you get caught and you get let go, right? But we're talking about the everyday terminations, right? For example, if you get fired over a poor performance evaluation, And this is the type of stuff they put on your performance evaluation, right? Uh, is unengaged, right? Um,
Hmm.
attention to detail, lack of attention to detail, needs development and communication. The person who's writing your evaluation is one person, but you might work with 50 people. So, did you take that opinion from a poll from the 50 people that you work with, or is it just the opinion of the one person who wrote your evaluation?
The one bozo that thinks he or she is God and has decided to the, deliver a verdict on your career.
Don't take it personal. So, because I don't communicate well with you,
Yes.
because the things that you feel like I should have attention to detail with based on your perspective
Mhm.
is lacking, or because I'm not engaged from your perspective because I'm reserved because we don't like each other or whatever the case may be. And a lot of times performance does suffer when you were working around somebody who's polarizing in the workplace that you happen to report to, right? That happens. But your relationship cross departments and interdepartmental interpersonnel with other people may not necessarily be the same as the person who is in charge of your evaluation. But I can almost guarantee this person is not going and talking to everybody whom you interact with, right? They're looking at your numbers and then they're weighing that up against how they feel about you. Yeah, I don't think you're working out here.
It's a fact. It's a fact, bro. And I think that separating that piece where soon enough is a piece that will set a lot of people free.
Yeah,
Because sometimes it takes people post incident with the coach to realize it. Where sometimes we got to get to a point where we've already connected with a coach or people who are willing to pour value into us early enough that we understand and see these things early. And sometimes for many people, their lane is their lane.
yep,
And they may not be good at other things. So that's why sometimes you can talk to someone who has a ridiculously high IQ, and you could be saying something that if either one, if any of our children heard what they said, they would give them sound advice. Because for some people, it's very easy to process certain things,
right.
and a lot of people who be in these situations don't value some of that stuff. Where it's like, sometimes you just need to talk to people beforehand. Like, you about to go somewhere new. What should you be looking at?
Mm-hmm.
What should you be looking for?
Right. Yeah. So don't take it personal. And if it happens to you, and if you work long enough, it might shake it off. It's illegal for people to even know that you was terminated from your last position unless you volunteer that information anyway. So wherever you go, you don't necessarily have to divulge it, right? And it's it's not even a part like people people aren't just sometimes you're just not a good fit somewhere. That don't mean you won't be somewhere else and that you got to carry this stigma of being let go or terminated with you. Leave it where you at. It just didn't work out.
If the world could get to that place, maybe some folks wouldn't be in relationships too long. This is outside of work. And then if the world could really get to the place of accepting that you don't own someone, right? You don't own their time. And I'm talking about even in relationships, right?
Yeah.
Regardless if it's significant other. Sometimes there's one person who gets to a point first, and realize this doesn't work. And we all got to make sure that we can process, you know, hey, it's okay. This isn't a poor reflection on me. Like
It's a snapshot.
I just this didn't work. Maybe how I operate doesn't work with that person.
I wasn't
Even though
ready.
that person goes and said, "Oh, he was horrible, or he was a narcissist." You know how many people I hear all the time? People keep saying is are a narcissist, and they always in a relationship.
Always.
Yeah, this person's been a narcissist since seventh grade and been in
Somebody
that
love me.
relationship for 29 years. Every
Somebody love them.
somebody
Somebody
is
love them. Period. And it's okay. There's something out there for everybody, right? And um, a very important thing to remember that'll help you is like, man, at a certain point, either one of us could have ended the relationship professionally. I could have quit and fired the job.
correct.
Shout out to Rakim Sabri, or they could have terminated me and ended the relationship.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, these situations have a beginning, a middle, and an end,
Yeah,
right?
that's that.
So once we go into the each one of these professional endeavors like that, with that realization, then what becomes the highlight is what you've learned as a staff person, as a professional, as an employee of said organization that you can take with you. At the end of the day, you're better off after 2 years, 1 year working somewhere under that experience than not ever going there at all, even if you do quit or get fired, right? You can still take those experiences as a valuable commodity to the corporate industrial complex that you can go and contribute, even if you end up taking your skills directly to the marketplace.
Yep.
You still got something. So, we have to change the connotation on it, right? Like our past guest, Corey Rodriguez, how he handled being let go. Man, he handled being let go brilliantly because he was doing his job, but he was pursuing something that he was more passionate at with more urgency. And it just so happened. Y'all can go back and watch that episode with Corey Rodriguez that just too many people knew his business. I need you to be giving that extra effort that you've given to something in your personal life
Mhm.
over here to me because this job is my whole life. You're not taking it serious, is what is what it, Robert, you remember what his supervisor told him, right? Like, man, and again, remember, some of these decision makers don't know what they're doing. They just made a move. They just made a decision because they needed to. Um,
Dumb, bro. Like half
like,
of
why
it.
would you let somebody go that you just like? If you really calculated how much money it costs to find a Robert, to onboard him, to pay his salary and his benefits, to end up letting him go over a meets expectations after 3 years, that is you just robbed yourself.
You know, what is very very valuable, bro. Is when people who you realize and consider to be highly intelligent and smart people acknowledge you as being smart and intelligent
Right,
and effective at what you do.
right,
Because in your mind, you may sometimes go into places and don't believe that you're on the same level as these folks in the lane that you're in.
right,
When that person lets you know, you could do this. It's a freeing moment. And I think that sometimes folks miss that opportunity just to let folks know, like, I see your value. I see what you bring to the table. I see what you can be. There's so much that you can do. You know what I mean? Like this is it, right? Like you could do this.
right.
You know what I mean?
and you can be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And like my career coach said, it's good to be good at something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We looking at all the wrong things. We're looking at higher salaries, we're looking at bigger titles, prettier organizational brands, and you good at where you're at. You good at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
How about you optimize that part first, right? Instead of overreaching your your value proposition because you want to be considered accomplished, with your career aspirations. When everybody can't be the CEO of the bank that Rob quit.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's only one CEO. Everybody can't be that. Now, I'm not saying if that's your goal, not to pursue it. But like Rob says, I'm the CEO of my own business, which is me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a full-time job, period. You know? Um, so we just have to be okay with what our gifting is, what our talents is, what our talents are. We have to be secure in what we bring to the table. It's like a track athlete. Either you're running against the competition in your heat, or you running to beat your best time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The the sprinter that's running to beat his best time is the one is gonna win, right? More often than somebody who's just running up against the competition in their heat. You're your own competition at the end of the day.
That's true.
Uh, the talent and the expertise comes in. How do I make what I do well fit with other people? And that's where that training and development comes in. That's where that coaching comes in. That's where the experience of having gone through some things professionally becomes very valuable, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody doesn't get a chance to take an open book test. You really just figuring it out as you go. So don't take it personal if you get fired. Don't shake it off.
Mm-hmm.
Plan your next move, right? Don't be afraid of unemployment. They taking it out of your check. I mean, look, you well, hold on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unemployment insurance, right? The very it's not it's nothing wrong with taking advantage of that, because that is a benefit available to you precisely for these types of situations. Um, Assess what you learned from that last situation. Learn from what may have happened, and build a better professional foundation for yourself to be a stronger contributor wherever you go next. Um, and but yeah, just process it, process it. That's all I got. What you do if you just so happen to have been terminated, like I have a couple times. I got some stories, man.
Listen, I know you got some stories, and
Hey, look, man.
I've heard so many of them. I've
Hey,
heard
look.
so
How
many
you
of
get
them.
fired on your day off? What, you was stealing
Craig,
boxes?
come on,
Come
come
on,
on,
Craig.
come on, Craig.
Come on, Craig. How you get fired on your day off? Ezel was up in there stealing boxes and got Craig fired.
Mm-hmm. Ain't that crazy? Ain't that crazy when you think about it? But that's how it works sometimes, right?
Right. But all right.
But we
Any
got
last word? Any parting thoughts, Mr. Felder?
self-reflection, man. Take some time. Don't let people make you out to be a commodity. Make you into a product. Um, self-reflect, self-evaluate. Make sure we have an idea of our own value, and don't just let people put what they believe our value is on us. Right?
Absolutely.
You define your worth. Um, Even on your worst day, you still define your worth because it's all
Absolutely.
about what you accept.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep. I agree. Man, just because the watch don't work no more does not mean the gold isn't any good. Melt
mhm,
it down and start over. That's part of it.
there we go.
That's what we got to do. All right, good people. Man, we hope you enjoyed the conversation. We hope we said something that helped you either plan your exit or prepare for when you have been shown the door. And if you need any help, if you want to talk about this further, if you feel like you need a coach, everybody needs a coach, right? If you were an athlete and you were playing a team sport or even an individual sport, you would probably have a coach. If you were a musician, a vocalist, you probably will have a vocal coach, right? If you were a method actor or a comedian, right, you would probably have a improv coach or an acting coach, right? But the majority of people who work for a living go professional in so many other endeavors, and we never consider
Yeah.
having somebody coach us through some of these situations that we may have never gone through. If that's you and you need help, reach out to myself or Mr. Felder, or better yet, man, bring us both in to help you help other people
That's a fact.
make decisions with respect to your career, your personal and entrepreneur endeavors, or if you want us just to come in and shake things up and change the culture as to where you work, make sure you reach out to us. But at the very least, keep tuning in to the Level Up Past Corporate Trauma podcast, right?
Mhm.
Because corporate trauma is a sneaky passive trauma that will creep up on you. And when it does,
It's time to level up.
peace.
Peace.